I want to share an experience with you that changed our lives forever. 22 years ago, I read a living epistle, 2 Corinthians 3:2, and I've never gotten over it. I met a family that was doing many, many things right in their home. I'm sure there were some things wrong there, but they were so far beyond me. In those days, a vision came to my heart. As I met this home, God used this family to implant some things in my heart that have changed the destiny of my children without a doubt, and inflamed me with a vision for godly homes. I was up in Minnesota many, many years ago, 22 years ago, helping two dear brothers hold revival meetings, revival crusades for 3 weeks in a town up in Minnesota. Each night, this family came. It's an unusual family. They were a bit different. They looked different. The ladies had a covering on their head. The men dressed more simple than everybody else. And I noticed this family as they came night by night. And one evening they had the family get up and sing a few songs in 4-part harmony, just like we had the blessing of hearing here this evening. I was impressed. I looked at that. One night this father came up to me after the meeting, and he said, "I'd like you to come to breakfast in my house in the morning." He invited me and one of my friends. Well, I told him, yeah, I'd be glad to come. I got some directions, and we parted, and I started moving around and visiting with others, and I said, well, I'm going to this certain family's house in the morning for breakfast. And the people got a big old smile on their face and said, "Oh, you'll enjoy that. You'll enjoy that." I said, "Okay, good, great." I didn't know what that meant. Well, Tuesday came. I and my friend, we headed out, crossed over the border into Canada, started trying to follow these directions that were given, and somehow we got lost. As I look at it now, God got us lost. We got lost. Didn't know where we were at, so we decided, what are we going to do? Strange city? Well, we'll stop and ask. So we stopped somewhere at a business and asked them. Said, "Could you tell us where these people live?" Giving their name. And man just got this big smile on his face, and he said, "Oh, sure. Yeah, I know where they live. Yeah, you just go down the road this way so far and make a left-hand turn. You go in there on the right, and the farm's back in there a ways." So we jumped back in the car and headed down the road, and somehow we missed that left-hand turn, and you know how that is. You go and just keep on going, just keep on going. Finally we said, "Whoa, I think there's something mixed up here." And we turned around and stopped in another place of business and said, "Sorry, we lost our way, and we're trying to find this place. Do you know where these people live?" And this guy got this big smile on his face. He said, "Oh, yeah, I know where they live. You just go up this way, make a right, go through this residential area, and it's down that way." So we kept on going and got into this residential area, and somehow I got lost in there too. Residential area, what am I going to do? Well, we knocked on a lot of doors going soul winning, so we knocked on the door and asked somebody in the residential area, and this person got this big smile on their face. Same story. "Oh yeah, sure, right down here." Well, we ended up at the farm, and typical farm scene, and boys were still doing the chores. Girls were in the house with mom, making breakfast, and all of a sudden the boys came in and sat down at the table and going to have a nice country breakfast there, and we did. We sat down and started eating, and after we finished our meal, had a nice spiritual conversation. The father, he turns to me and gives me the Bible and says, "You're going to have the devotions this morning." And I thought, instant in season, out of season. I opened up Ephesians chapter 1. That's a good place to start if you haven't studied. And started reading in Ephesians chapter 1, and I looked around the room a little bit to see how things were, and I noticed every one of the children had their eyes shut as I was reading the scriptures. They were squeezing to get whatever they could get out of what I was reading. Well, we had our time of sharing, and after the time of sharing was over, then they passed out the song books and we started singing. I never heard singing like that before. It was beautiful. I mean, a family who's been singing together for year after year after year. And we all sang together. And the heaven came down and the glory of God came into that little dining room while we sang those songs. It was beautiful. After we finished singing, the father dismissed the breakfast table there, and as soon as he was done, I mean, all the children, the boys, they jumped on me. They had tracts in their back pockets and tracts in their front pockets, and they were giving me a tract on the verbal inspiration of the Bible, and they wanted to know what I thought about Billy Graham, and they were just going on like this, and I was kind of taken back by these fellas, they were so zealous. And as soon as I finished with them, then the mom dragged me into the next room and started weeping and said, "Oh, Brother Denny, pray for revival. We need revival in our town." And I'm just taking all this in, I'm thinking, wow, this is different. So then the boys, they're going to take me on a tour, and we're going to go around and look at the things on the farm, and I didn't know much about farms, so we started to go around the farm, and while we were walking and sharing about the Lord, why the milk truck pulled in right there in the middle of our conversation, and one of the fellas, he stopped talking, got a tract out of his back pocket, jumped up there on the truck, stuck the tract through the window and said, "Hey, have you been born again?" And I'm just watching all this. We finished the little tour, and I got back in my car and said goodbye, and the little lady of the house, she came out with a loaf of German bread and a dozen eggs. That was her little gift that she gave, to those that visited. And she gave them to me, and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. We're having a revival for 3 weeks, and my wife was at home, so I just put them in the back seat of the car, and we started driving, and we drive back and came to the border to go across, back into the United States, and here comes the customs officer, He walks up there, and, they kind of put on a gruff face, that shakes out all the dishonest ones, and he walked up to the car and he said, "Where are you going?" And I told him, and we're going to the United States. We've been visiting friends, and he said, "You got anything in the car?" And I said, No, sir, we don't." And then all of a sudden I remembered, get that bread. And I said, "We do have something in the back seat." "Oh, what's that?" I said, "We have a loaf of German bread and a dozen eggs." And this guy's face just got a big smile on it, and he said, "Oh, I know where you've been." And he named the name of that family. "Yeah, you can go on," he said, and he sent me on down the road. We drove down the road, and I'm just thinking, Lord, what meaneth all of this? What meaneth all of this, God? Well, it took a little while for the dust to settle and for those things to settle down in my poor, blinded heart. But after a few days, I began to cry to God. I said, "God, I want that, Lord. I want that. I saw something there, God, that I've never seen, and I want it, Lord." I began to pray like that, and back then we just had 3 children, Rebecca was 4, Daniel was 2, Elizabeth was a little nursing baby, and God took His finger and wrote upon the table of my heart that day a picture that I never forgot. Well, I went home. By the time I got home, my heart was fixed. Jackie didn't know what happened to me. She didn't know what to do with me. And it's been that way a few times since also. She has been a faithful wife to follow this fanatic, I'll tell you that. But anyway, I came home and I shared these things that I had seen and heard with my dear wife, and I said, "Honey, we're going to go for it. We're going to have devotions. We're going to get the children together. We're going to sing. We're going to teach them the Bible. We're going to have a godly home." I didn't know if I used those terms or not, but I told her I want to have a home like what I saw there. I want a home that has an influence in the community. I want to have a home that the community knows there's something special about that family. That's what I wanted. And we didn't know what we were doing back in those days, but we sat them all together, Little Rebecca, she was in her little rocking chair, and Daniel, he was sitting in his crib, sucking his thumb. Sorry, Daniel. And little Elizabeth, she was nursing yet. And we took 3 songs. That was it. 3 songs. We're going to sing. We're going to sing like that family sings. Someday my family's going to sing like that family sings. And we're going to start with 3 songs. And we sang the same 3 songs again and again and again. We made a lot of mistakes, but our hearts were set and our hearts were right, and we wanted something that we